If you're looking for some really good horror movies to watch this year, but you don't have much money and you don't have much sitting on your shelf, I highly recommend going back and checking out some of the earliest horror movies ever made. Some of the great stuff from the 20s through the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. There's a bunch of stuff out there that's actually available for free through public domain. So all you really have to do is go to archive.org and you will find every single movie that I am about to discuss in this particular video. As a matter of fact, I will be linking to every single movie in this video in the description below. So all you really have to do is go to the description, click the link, and you can watch it for free, legally. Yes, this is all 100% legal because these are all 100% legal public domain prints of the films. And no, not all of them are going to be in the best shape, but you'd be surprised at how good some of these movies look after so many years. So the first one I want to talk about, obviously having just reviewed the Blu-ray, is Alfred Hitchcock's The Lodger, which is a fantastic suspense thriller film from 1927 that is actually really impressive even to this day. And it really goes to show where Alfred Hitchcock was headed with his filmmaking, even back then. So, you know, if you like the gothic kind of tale, if you're really into gothic stuff, the 20s and the 30s were a great time in horror for gothic films. So if you're really into gothic stuff, I highly recommend checking out The Lodger. I think you'll have a great time with that if you haven't already seen it. The second film I want to recommend is The Phantom of the Opera from 1925, featuring Lon Chaney. Like I was saying in my previous video discussing Universal before they became the House of Horror, this really is one of those movies that is one of the first films you see from this studio that actually ends up telling a cohesive and interesting story that will keep you interested throughout. So a lot of the earlier ones, they really didn't know how to tell a decent story visually, but in The Phantom of the Opera 1925, it's more than decent enough, and you get more than enough out of the experience in order to enjoy it. These, of course, are silent films, so if you're not into silent films, you might not like them. But if you do want to get some of that obvious, beautiful film history, I highly recommend checking out The Phantom of the Opera, which leads me to my next recommendation. Obviously, Nosferatu from 1922 is an excellent option. It's one of the first vampire movies ever made. It's one of the most notable vampire movies ever made. And the funny thing is, it's not even technically in the public domain, but nobody has bothered to stand up and claim it. But the fact of the matter is, I was actually reading up about this, and according to some people, this might not actually be in the public domain, but it was not registered in the United States. So in the United States, if it's not registered, it's technically in the public domain, even though it's not really in the public domain. And the thing is, you've seen this film and you've seen shots from this film you've used in so many TV shows and movies and whatnot, and I guarantee you that the studios who used those shots in their movies and television shows didn't pay a dime to do so. So you really have nothing to fear, and like I said, this is a copy that you'll find on archive.org. You have nothing to fear from going and checking this out on archive.org. It is completely and totally legal. If anybody gets in trouble for this, it's not going to be you, it's going to be archive.org. And, well, they have a pretty good reputation, so there's not much to worry about. Next up, I think one of my favorite movies now, I just saw it for the first time, but one of my favorite silent horror films from the era now has to be The Cat and the Canary. It was so good. I was really shocked at how good this movie is. You might also be shocked. It really feels like the proper haunted house movie that we came to know and love in the years following. I mean, we really didn't get a lot of great haunted house films until I feel like the 50s and the 60s and stuff like that. and even on into the 70s. And if you watch this movie, you will probably note, as I did, a lot of the same tropes that you see in a lot of haunted house movies that were to come afterward. Color me impressed. And this print, this particular print, as you may be noticing, is actually very nice. And you can get it on archive.org right now. It is completely legal, completely free. You don't have to pay a dime, and you can watch it right now. I highly recommend you do so. Even if you don't like silent films, this is an excellent movie, and it was made right before the era of the talkie, of the movies that you have come to know and love, where, you know, they talk. So it kind of plays out a lot like a talkie. So it's probably not going to be that difficult for you to keep track of, even if you're not really into the silent film thing. My next recommendation would be The House on Haunted Hill, which is another great public domain film starring Vincent Price and a lot of other great actors, and it is one of the quintessential haunted house movies. Honestly, if you watch The Cat and the Canary and House on Haunted Hill back to back, I think you'll really appreciate what I'm trying to say when I say that The Cat and the Canary went on to inspire a lot of other films, because you'll see a lot of the same things that they did in The Cat and the Canary happening in The House on Haunted Hill. And that's not a bad thing, mind you. It's just what filmmakers did back in the day, and it's something they still do, to be quite honest. It's just they're not so blatant about it anymore. And the thing is, it used to be called an homage. We used to call these things homage. We didn't say they were a rip-off. It's not a rip-off per se. It's just taking the same concept, telling a different story with it. I don't think that there's a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. And I think that anybody who likes haunted house films will probably get a kick out of House on Haunted Hill if they haven't already seen it. So yes, another great one that you should definitely check out that's on the public domain right now. Next up, we have The Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price. This is the first, I believe it's the first adaptation of the same story from I Am Legend and I Am Omega and Omega Man and all those movies. So if you are interested at all in that story and you want to see how some of the first adaptations of that story looked on film, I highly recommend The Last Man on Earth. It's a really good movie, surprisingly good, even if you wouldn't think that you're going to like a movie like this. It's just a fantastic one, and the print on public domain on archive.org is actually very nice. So yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. And last but not least, I think everyone knows about this by now, but if you don't, Night of the Living Dead is actually in the public domain, at least one print of it is, and it's free to watch. You can go on archive.org right now and watch it free of charge. You're not doing anything illegal. It's completely legal. So yeah, have fun with that. If you have not seen Night of the Living Dead yet, then you definitely need to go check it out, and you can do so completely free, completely legal. No problem whatsoever with that. So yeah, there's plenty of good stuff to watch this Halloween, this horror season as it were, and a lot of it can be had for free on archive.org in the public domain. Now, this is just like a small selection of the movies that are in the public domain, and it's also a small selection of the movies that you'll find on archive.org for free legally. So if you want to get even more bang for your, well, for no bucks, then I highly recommend checking out archive.org and just looking around and seeing what they have, because you might be surprised at how many horror movies are on that site. There were a lot of horror movies that were left in the public domain that nobody cared enough about because, well, a lot of them weren't very good. The ones that I mentioned are pretty damn good, but some of the other ones that you'll find in the public domain or that you'll find on archive.org are maybe not as good. But if you're into the cheesy sci-fi movie, the B movie from the 60s and 50s, then you can't go wrong with archive.org. you're going to find a lot of cool stuff on there. That being said, that's all I'm going to talk about today. So thanks for watching, and let me know if you find anything interesting on archive.org that maybe I should have talked about in this video. But anyways, catch you next time.